So we'll call this meeting of the Academic Senate at Santa Barbara City College to order on this day, November 10th at 3:09 p.m. Our Academic Senate community values are always posted on our agenda for all of us to remember our work. So I'd like to share number one, say it in the meeting. We want to create an atmosphere for open, honest exchange. If something is bothering you and you are open to sharing it, please share it with the group. Speak to your discomfort. Often our emotional reactions to authentic exchanges can offer valuable learning opportunities. As members of the Academic Senate, we need to be willing to be uncomfortable in the work at the table. We have our Zoom meeting guidelines posted. I know we're all pretty used to them at this point. Just as a reminder, if you want to contribute to the discussion and you're a senator or an invited guest, you raise your hand in the participants field on Zoom. Approval of the agenda has been posted and distributed. We're going to move forward with it as posted and shared. We do have a timed item, which is our item on inclusive access. So that will happen at 4 p.m. And we have somebody coming and giving a presentation on that. So at this time, I will call for public comment. If anyone is here and would like to give public comment, you may indicate you would like to do so at this time. Please raise your virtual hand. Okay, I'm seeing none. So we'll move on. Item 4.1, meetings of our special meeting on October 14th and also the regular meeting from last week. So they were both there. Trisha Matone had a question about her vote being recorded for the special meeting, which is why we tabled the approval of that minutes last time. We had Chris listen to the meeting and the vote was inaudible. So that is why the minutes were updated as such. So if anyone would like to offer an amendment to either of the minutes, you can indicate that now. If not, we can accept the minutes as posted and distributed. Anyone have edits to either of the meeting minutes shared? Okay. All right. So my president's report, quite short this week. There's been some leadership changes at the college. At the time that this was written, Anselmo Villanueva had not resigned, so he has since resigned. I talked this afternoon with our president and superintendent. What is the plan for his replacement? And it sounds like she's gonna be looking at a couple of things structurally, looking at the job description, and then perhaps coming back for a replacement in the spring. So more on that later. Vice President Joyce Coleman has now moved into a vice president position that is special assistant to the superintendent president. She is overseeing COVID. So those things are happening. Our ASCCC award for SBCC music was submitted. There's a number of high flex organizational meetings happening. So high flex is a kind of a new modality of teaching where it's basically asynchronous, synchronous Zoom, and in class traditional modality all at once. So I am currently involved in those conversations, and we have another meeting later in November, and nothing is happening yet around that at the college. But as a matter of fact, Alan Hancock is having all of their faculty teach only synchronously Alan Hancock has made the decision to not allow asynchronous instruction or room and Zoom, as they call it, this high flex scenario. So they are our neighbors. So I thought I would share that out, and I am in conversation with them about how they're doing this high flex and things like that. So definitely more on that soon. Something I want to highlight for you all, the top part of the president's report, my links from DTC. If you weren't already aware, I think it is incredibly important for faculty to know that the college is moving forward and planning a Computers for Students project. I've mentioned this previously. It didn't have a good name. They called it Project X, called it a couple of things. Still haven't landed on a good name for it, but in short, the college wants to move to kind of a program where all students either purchase their own computer for use on the campus, or through like the foundation or something, we put a computer in their hands. So what computers, at what level, why, what do they need to be successful as a student, and all of those things are what is being discussed. So I'm bringing this to you now. There's two really important links that I want you to put in front of your faculty, which is ITC did a summary of faculty feedback on this student pilot project, so it's linked there. Please share that out. And then also student feedback was collected as well. So we are very early in the organization around this. Sounds like we'll have a small pilot around this, small launch, where the foundation supplies computers. So what computers, like I said, at what level, and what are they used for, and how do students get them, and how is that vetted, is all happening now. So putting this in front of your faculty so your faculty know where to give feedback, when, where, and why would be a really good use of your time as a senator. Okay, which brings us to item 5.2, Senate liaison reports. So Senate liaisons provided written reports. Do any of the Senate liaisons want to provide an oral report at this time? Senate liaisons, you're all good? Okay. Dr. Kathy Scott is not here with us today. She and Kindred are actually at the C meeting and the Student Equity Committee meeting right now, so she was unable to join us. I did want to share out something that was shared. Margarita is asking, what is DTC, District Technology Committee? Something that was shared out yesterday at SEM, Strategic Enrollment Committee. So let me find it so that I can get it right. So the college has received $1.3 million for, it's restricted funding. It's from the Chancellor's Office, specifically for student retention and enrollment outreach. So we only have until June to spend this money. Specifically, it was, why did we get this amount? It's my understanding that there was $90 million statewide, and then each district was allocated an amount proportional to their 2019 to their through 2020 FTS. So this money is supposed to be used primarily to address enrollment and retention. And so it will be shared out, and planning around this will happen and shared out at CPC. So please make sure to look for more information. I believe it's going to be agendized at the next CPC meeting, which is next Tuesday. And so, yeah, so be on the lookout for that, but please know that that money will be coming, but it is restricted money and can only be used for those efforts. And the big push for that is going to be re-engagement of students that we lost through the last few years. Okay, so there was one request, and this request actually went to Senate steering, and Senate steering did not want to agendize this item. So I am bringing it to the Senate body as a whole to see if the Senate body would like to agendize this or not. So this particular item came from Manu Eskandari in the political science. So to give you a little background information, political science was mostly online for the spring. And then because it was identified as a department that was not offering, let's say, enough face-to-face offerings for those conversations that we were having around spring planning, the dean informed Manu that the district would be hiring part-time faculty on behalf of the department to teach political science classes face-to-face, because those that were already employed were not willing or able to offer face-to-face classes. So he approached me with this idea. We looked at the administrative policy 7210, recruitment and selection. It does specifically say that selections of candidates for part-time positions shall be made by the department chair. However, I also reached out to Vice President of Human Resources, Michael Shanahan, and his responses there in this document, shared document as well. Basically, yes, it's up to a chair to hire part-time faculty, but if a chair is unwilling to do so and there is a class demand or need, that the district would move forward and hire them. So Manu felt that this was of Senate's concern. Senate was, like I said, Senate steering was not interested in agendizing this item at this time. And so the item is here in front of Senate. And as per our norms around this process, if a senator would like to agendize this item, you should make a motion to agendize it at a future meeting. We would need a second, and then the majority of senators to vote in favor of that. So I'll ask, does anyone want to make a motion to agendize this requested item of the Senate's consideration? I'm seeing no such indication. Is that correct? All right. Thank you. Which brings us to our consent agenda. Okay, so item 6.1. The only items on our consent agenda are the Academic Senate appointees to the Superintendent President's task forces, of which there are two. So the return to campus. So for the Academic Senate and the RN faculty, we have Kathy O'Connor and Maureen Horner willing to serve. And then we have the more long-term task force, which is the future of work. And Ana Garcia and Jess Estrada are here for your consideration. So remember the way our consent agenda goes. We approve the consent agenda as a whole. If anybody would like to pull something off for discussion, you indicate that before we do the vote, or we just vote on the consent agenda as a whole. So I'd love to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda or have someone request that items need to be pulled off. Robbie.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second. That's Ruth.
Counselor Jen Your hand was up to second.
It was, well, no, I just had a clarifying question. So these committees, where do they report back to? I don't know if I'm able to ask that now, but is it here in Senate or is it in another committee, or how would we hear about the feedback that's presented?
Yeah, so it's both of them are superintendent task force that are basically ad hoc, being created for these very specific purposes. So yes, I would expect the faculty appointees to share out, in some capacity with us. And also I think the work product formally would be shared at CPC.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. So for our consent agenda, you can vote yes, you can vote no, you may abstain. So Benjamin Reyes,
Yes.
Counselor Jen,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Jenny,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Dee Dee, Elizabeth,
Yes.
Kathy O'Connor.
Sorry, yes.
Robin is not here yet. Lost track. Jess,
Yes.
Robbie,
Yes.
Ruth,
Yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Trisha,
Yes.
and Anna.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So those are approved. Okay, thank you for that. All right, information items, item 7.1. So this is the item that was on our last agenda and we've talked about previously. This is just here as an information item. So remember that we had the proposed constitutional changes come to the Senate via petition. We had an ad hoc committee created that worked them into the document. So right now is the review period. So the proposed changes are in front of all faculty. You should have received at least a few emails from me by now. The review period closes today. We have a faculty plenary on November 12th from 12:30 to 2. So you should have already received the Zoom invite, or excuse me, the calendar invite for that, as well as it's posted on board docs, similar to our agendas. So please come to that. Questions, comments, and concerns are all welcome there to discuss the proposed changes. And then the voting period. So again, this is not an item that is voted on by Senate. It is voted on by individual faculty members. The voting period will open November 15th, that's next Monday, and then it will go through November 23rd, firm cutoff of 12 p.m., and then the results will be shared out December 1st at our academic Senate meeting. So it came up at Senate steering today that it should be advised that you all as senators write a very clear standalone email to your division faculty. The most important point that should be made is that faculty vote. So remember that we need to at least have more than half of full-time or tenure track faculty vote for it to be even a valid vote. There are 8 separate amendments that will be voted upon. The first one is just typos and removing gendered language from our Constitution. So can we at least all agree as a faculty body that we are for a Constitution without typos? I hope so. So can you at least rally your troops around that item? And then the other amendments can be voted on in a one-on-one case-by-case scenario. So please, senators, take that work, put it in front of your faculty. You don't need to have a debate amongst the division. We all get our own unique individual votes. So we don't need to, convince each other of our positions. We can just vote and put that in front of them. remind them of the plenary this Friday. Please have them come, engage in this process, understand why these amendments are in front of us, and then the votes go where they lie. I'm working with institutional research, Z and Melanie, to create an anonymous survey so that the voting can be anonymous, that will go just to those eligible to vote. So Ellen, Elizabeth, and then Trisha, clarifying questions only, please.
Can I emphasize something that you just said?
Sure.
Or only clarifying? Okay, I just wanted to ask faculty as senators when they're speaking with their faculty to really emphasize that these constitutional changes cannot happen unless we have a majority of full-time faculty voting. So it's not just, they don't pass based on a majority of the votes passed or cast. They require a majority of full-time faculty voting. So that's a high bar, and it would just be really helpful if you could emphasize that to your divisions.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ellen. Elizabeth?
I was just wondering, for the plenary, if people can't go, is there going to be a recording or anything like that?
We talked about that today. We were on the fence about it because, you know, we want it to be a faculty only conversation, and recording definitely changes the dynamics, and we recognize all of that. And we want to make sure that it's accessible to people. So it sounds like that we will be recording it. It sounds like we're not going to post it on our YouTube site the way we do with Senate meetings, but that anybody that wants the recording link can get it.
Thank
Trisha?
you.
Yeah, just to clarify, and I'm sorry if I misunderstood, but are we on Friday, then if we have feedback or like a suggested word change, that Friday is when we discuss it?
No, that is not possible at this point in the process.
Okay, so, I mean, if it was just, okay, it's not like content, it's just like okay, so that what's happening on Friday, whatever, we're just discussing the pros and cons of the changes, not other, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll think, yeah.
Yeah, so we have a very specific process for getting amendments into the Constitution. So we had the petition that said, these are the changes we want to see. The Senate approved that. Then the ad hoc committee put in those changes, and then the Senate approved those changes. So that was the time for clarity in language and stuff. So
I just meant like it's a typo, like, you know, it says what's the word? It says appointmenting or something, you know, that point that out, or something like the fact that it just like says senators and then part-time senators, but it should be part-time faculty. I mean, I thought it was a little, you know, nothing substantial, but okay, I'll hold that till the next round, I guess. Okay.
Okay, cool. All right. Coolness. All right. 7.2, I especially am asking our science senators, especially, or any senators that have, and science, health, human services, and other senators that have lab and activity classes to share out this document for feedback from with your faculty. So this document was created because of the conversations with department chairs that Cornelia and I were having around the time of discussing spring 2022 scheduling. So when Cornelia and I were meeting with individual department chairs, something we heard from especially a couple science department chairs was, well, what's the point of offering lab in person right now, because students can't collaborate, and lab is a collaborative work environment. And so if they can't collaborate, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's virtual or in person. And with that in mind, Cornelia and I decided I would work with Timothy Fouch to come up with very clear guidelines for student collaborative work. So yes, this is, the heading is laboratory COVID-19 precautions, but like if you are interested in collaborative work in a non-laboratory class, like of course you can think about implementing some of these things. So I think Timothy did a really good job on this document. He has very clear recommendations. So for instance, the first one, lab partners should remain consistent. And then he gives a really sound rationale for that, right? So share this out with your faculty, see where it lands with them. There is a linked Google document on the agenda. You can put your comments, or faculty can put their comments straight into the document. And Timothy and I will work to either update the document if it's a really good suggestion, or answer questions, comments, or concerns in there. So again, this document is created to give instructors some guidance for students working together collaboratively. So we hope that helps. Okay, item 7.3. So this is an item that was shared out to me on the Academic Senate President's listserv. And I really wanted to, I put this in front of our part-time senators to share out as well. And I would really like to see the Senate take up some action around this. So last meeting and a meeting previous to that, I shared out that Q homework assignment to you all to read and think about what we want to do as a Senate for organizing ourselves. I'm doing the same thing with this Ascccc Mentorship Handbook. So, the history of the handbook and why it was created is there on the agenda, and then also a link to the handbook. And while it did come out of the part-time committee's work at the state level, this kind of modeling mentorship program for new faculty, whether it's full-time or part-time, is relevant for both. And next year we are hiring 10 new faculty members in very important departments, which is very much the important work of our Senate each fall. And I would like to see a mentoring program be developed for the full-time faculty that are hired, but also part-time faculty. We talk a lot on this campus about equity and inclusion, and being supportive and making sure that people find their place on campus. And I feel as though that as faculty, we could own that for other faculty, new faculty, a little bit more. My son really needs chocolate milk. He really needs something to eat. Yes, all right, hold on one second, bud. So I would really like to see the Senate own this. When I started in 2012, there was a pseudo faculty mentoring process that was run by the deans. I found that to be a lifesaver. I honestly don't think I would have gotten past my first year as faculty on this campus without that group, specifically because I was one of the first people to be hired in years, and the department was very set in their ways and had very specific and strict policies. And I felt as though I did not fit in. And that was what saved me, was finding community outside of my own department. So I think that this is something really important for us to think about and work on. We already fully supported the anti-racism practices that are literally coming into place for this hiring process. So hopefully I would like to see Senate pick up this next part, which is this faculty mentoring mentee model. So whether it comes from this document that I'm sharing with you all, or if people are interested in creating an ad hoc group to develop this kind of mentorship process, I think that that would be a really good use of our time. So I'll bring that to Senate steering, and hopefully we'll come back to Senate with that, but please reach out if you have ideas around that. Okay, so the time is now 3:38. We have a timed item for 4 p.m. So let's see where we can get with the syllabus language suggestion. So this is our second time we've discussed this. I will be honest, I got a little frustrated last time during this conversation. Hopefully it didn't ooze out too much. So again, the background on this was very like not vetted, just rough language put in front of Senate through that request and agendized item process. The Senate voted, we agendized it, so it came in front of us. There is, and it came out of those spring 2020 considerations of how do we get faculty support, or how do we manage student expectations in the classroom? You know, how can we offer face-to-face, in-person classes, and manage student expectations of that if you are face-to-face, then the class is face-to-face, and basically multiple modalities are not offered for different reasons. So that is in front of us. Quite frankly, if we don't want this as a Senate, we don't have to do this, right? Like each individual faculty member can put in their syllabus whatever they want or not, and it does not have to be Senate approved, right? So I almost feel as though like we kind of accomplished what we may have needed, which is just sharing this idea out in a faculty-wide manner, and then like people can do with it what they want, right? In addition to the language that is already there on our Senate for consideration, I have a document from Joyce Coleman, Vice President Joyce Coleman. It's a several-page document. She reached out to colleges all around the country for suggested language around the same topic, to also share out with the Senate, so that again, like there are clear student expectations. Her document is a little bit more broad than what the language is before us. So for instance, like, did you know that when a student tells you that they are sick, that you are supposed to instruct them to fill out the healthy roster so that the contact tracer can initiate that process. And without them doing that, the contact tracing process doesn't get started. So language around that is in there, right? And so again, you don't have to include this in your syllabus, but for those of you that want to include this in your syllabus, or perhaps create a handout for your class, you will now have access to that language as well. Joyce wanted me to let you know that it is rough language, okay? And I failed to communicate that the language on our agenda for consideration was also rough, right? It was just like a faculty member put it down, sent it to me, said the subject was, here are my embryonic thoughts. It was a biologist, so of course they said that, but I didn't want people to think that like this was like the end all be all of the language, right? And I failed to communicate that last time around. So I feel like I did a disservice to the faculty member that shared that with us. Okay, so while Robbie's talking, I'm going to upload Joyce's document to our agenda so that the public and you all have access to it at the same time. Robbie, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask a question and a statement, and you just answered the question. Where is Joyce's document? So thanks for that. And the statement is that I put this text verbatim in front of my whole division, and I reported in some detail the way our conversation went, reflecting accurately the proportion of different views, you know, how many people expressed this and how many people expressed that. And I didn't get one single comment on this. And so I think I share your idea that we have talked about this and we report on stuff to our divisions, and maybe the best way to handle this is to just tell our division what some options are, and that of course they're free to do what they want.
That's right. That's right. I have concern about it being Senate endorsed. I have concern about waxing on this continuously when we all get to do what we want anyways, right? So, yeah. Kathy?
I had just the opposite experience of Robbie. I had more response from my faculty on this than almost anything else I've sent to them, which is interesting. But I agree. I don't think we need to take action, but I think it was a really good discussion. And I think any suggestions for language for syllabi is very good. And it could be that in my area, because we have so many activity classes, which actually do need participation in order to be evaluated appropriately, my faculty were very interested in this because, you know, we need to have our students show up. And they are, of course, excused for COVID and other illness issues, but it gets a little bit problematic when they're missing 4, 5, 6 weeks of class. So at least it gave us some thoughts and some ideas about how to word a statement, and probably as a division or department, we might come up with something that could be used. But I thought it was really good, and I'm anxious to see what Joyce has to share with us, because I do agree we have to have our students fill out healthy roster. We've been experiencing that in our department where we hear about symptoms 3, 4, 5 days later, and it's a problem for us. So I think that's a really good one.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Kathy. Jenny?
I liked where I thought we kind of ended last time, which is the idea that such a sentiment is important for faculty to consider, but might best be handled on an individual basis or just discussed within departments and disciplines that might have different needs. And I think you provided some great ideas for that, Ray, within science, and Kathy just spoke to PE, and I know in the English department, we're hoping to talk about this idea for our division in our December meeting. I'm not in favor of endorsing a statement like this or putting a recommendation out from the Senate. I would hope or advocate that the messaging is instead just that. This is something for people to grapple with and make a determination about, but not to endorse any particular language.
Okay. So where are we at with that? We feeling good? Is there anything else that we need to discuss around this? I'd like to point out that I have now added Joyce's document. I'm on my laptop. I need more real estate on my screen. Okay, there we go. So Joyce's draft document is there as a PDF. She wanted to get this to us soon. She and I discussed, she wanted to get it to us as faculty sooner rather than later. I shared with her that oftentimes faculty will finalize their spring syllabus before they even leave for Christmas break, holiday break. So she got this to us. As you will note, there are still some edits in there. You know, there's a couple things like this needs to be updated, that needs to be updated, but there's some options in there for people to take different parts of it and use. And you will get an updated version of this as it, you know, comes out. So please expect that. Can we move on? Right on. All right, so we're still not at our 4 o'clock timeline. So what I would like to do is move on to item 8.3, and then we will come back to item 8.2. So item 8.3 came from a senator asking why we label at the Senate for ranking replacement positions for when faculty retire for only 2 years. When she asked that, it was Joy Coons, when she asked that, I wasn't sure where it was codified, procedure, policy, I wasn't sure. So I started asking questions. Come to find out, It's not codified in policy anywhere, and it is quite literally Senate's practice of doing this. So a little bit of history is shared here in this PDF, this attached email exchange, and it's basically just, you know, an email exchange between Dean Nevins and I. Dean Nevins as a former academic senate president, not as the executive director of IT, but he gave us that history of why it's called that. And so I shared that out with all of you, just so that you had it with permission, so that, you know, he and I had the exchange, and I said, can I publish this email? And he said, yes, you can. So it's here for your consideration. I think Joy shared that she would like to see replacement positions be requested for up to 5 years past somebody's retirement. I actually feel very differently. I don't feel as though we should be labeling position requests at the Senate at all. I think it just should be position requests, and you can mention in the narrative that somebody has retired or is retiring, but that we don't necessarily act as if the positions being requested are separate things, because we all know they technically aren't. And we all know it's the same bucket. But Joy wanted us to go to 5 years, and I discovered that this is just our practice. So maybe from our discussion, we can formalize, like, perhaps we don't need a resolution around this, but maybe just a memo to capture our conversation and give a recommendation for instance, next year's rankings or the year after that, or until whenever Senate decides they want to do something differently in the far off future. So questions, comments, concerns, opinions, anecdotes, knock knock jokes. Ruth, go.
Yeah, I agree that there shouldn't be a distinction. I think having that distinction can impose a bias, or at minimum like an anchoring. You know, in behavioral theory, that idea of like, well, it's labeled as this, so it should go a particular way. I think each time we're faced with a request, it should be an assessment of where we are, where we stand, what we need, and it shouldn't have anything to do with the language that we use.
Joy?
Yeah, I really appreciate you pursuing this, Ray. And the only reason I brought up 5 years was because I thought 2 years was codified. So I would be very happy to just not, you know, not call it one thing or have any kind of cap on these requests. I shared this out with my division, and the concern we have that, you know, these replacing faculty would be data driven. And I know we don't need to hash this out now, but I want to really put it out there that we don't want data driving replacement faculty only. I noticed that Dean Nevin said that he was, you know, he would give a little concern to breadth across the institution, so we maintain breadth of classes. So my division really pushed back on that, of course, because, you know, we will never have the major numbers that say comm does or sociology. And so, you know, when the time comes for maybe Senate to act or make a statement, I'd like us to consider that breadth of the institution rather than having it purely data driven. Say Fine Arts Division is very community facing, and part of our charges at a community college is to be community facing. So there are a lot of considerations in addition to being data driven that I feel really strongly that, you know, should be considered, and you know, hopefully the deans realize that too, and the president when they make these faculty rankings. So I know we're on a tight timeline. I could read out what our graphic design instructor shared or wanted me to share at the meeting. But I want to, I want to make sure that I'm hearing it right, that you kind of gave this informational piece, Ray, that 2, 5, we can just dispense with that distinction. That's right, correct? Okay. Do we have time for me to read out James's piece? I'll do it. It'll just be a minute.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. So, in relation to this sort of data-driven phrase, he said, it was interesting to see what happened during the pandemic. What got everyone through the long days, weeks, months of shutdown? The fine arts did. Films, television, music, games. That's what kept everyone sane, entertained, grounded. And those programs on Netflix, etc., they employ visual artists, musicians and composers, graphic designers, multimedia designers and animators, as well as actors, set designers, costume designers. The list goes on. Also, which department has won an award for the most outstanding job in innovation learning during the pandemic shutdown? Music. So he said, in my opinion, every career choice, life path demands skills and creativity and rewards those who can tap into that creativity and use it. That's why we now see big companies that employ a CCO or Chief Creative Officer, like Burberry, Disney, Calvin Klein, Pixar, Guess, Marvel, and Apple. And he added, the one other thing, the faculty body is shrinking overall, not just in the FA division, but the number of administrators is going up. We're in an era of hard financial times for the college, and we've lost dozens of faculty, but they have invented new administration positions and are filling them. In my opinion, we should be very, very concerned about this trend. So I know that puts us a little bit, into another issue, but this is a direct sharing back from my division. And I know we always ask, what are faculty saying from our division? So there's a one opinion. Thanks, appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. And I appreciate your faculty taking the time to write that and share with us his train of thought. I want to share with you, Joy, and others at the Senate, and we do have just a few more minutes before we need to move on to our 4 o'clock item, that I was thinking about exactly what you shared with the Senate, Joy, which is why are we so data driven around our rankings at the Senate? And I was thinking about that just yesterday at SEM. Reese was there explaining basically like all the stuff we use for ranking, WISH and FTF and FTS, and he was going through it at SEM, which is the Strategic Enrollment Management Committee, so that we can understand efficiency. So some departments acknowledge their high efficiency, like I always, Mike Young always nods to physics efficiency. And then and so we were talking around efficiency, and I got thinking about how can you be student-centered with the data when being efficient for one program might be being efficient, but for another it might be inefficient. So I was thinking about our own rankings. And when I was a senator, I used to go through and look at the full-time equivalent faculty ratios, especially like how many are needed and how many does a department have. And I ranked my rankings heavily on that. And I started thinking if we get too far into being data-driven around the ranking, we would end up as a college with like basically only English and math.
Or large lecture.
And I was thinking about that, and clearly we need more English and more math for transfer and all of that. But at the same time, how are we shaping our college? And this is where I was going during SEM. I don't know that we are. We are not proactively shaping our college. We are being reactive every year with Senate rankings. So like faculty retire, they say they retire in late August, and by October 1st, we're all at Senate clamoring for a replacement position for that. And then if we don't get it, then what, right? And there's no, what bothers me about the shaping of our college through attrition is that there's no intentionality there. And Senate ranks and the dean's ranks, and then the president makes a decision, and then that's that, right? But there is no larger discussion of, you know, so when I was having lunch during our rankings, I was hearing what an amazing marine diving tech program we have and how historically it has brought people to our school, and it's not in other areas around the state. So students are coming here for it. There's also a lot of capital invested in it, right? We have a lot of equipment, we have boats, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm thinking like, and those positions did not rank very high this year for us. And I'm thinking like, well, what if they don't rank very high next year, right? And then we just don't hire. Where was the strategic planning in that, right? There was none. It's just all reactionary. So
right, we have a lot of wealth tied up in our laboratories and our facilities. Yeah.
And so the same thing is true of ceramics, right? So anyways, I mean, I don't know how Senate can be better involved in that strategic planning of faculty positions and rankings, but I'm starting to see the need to do so, to be so.
Oh, I really appreciate that.
But okay, I'm glad you appreciate that, but now we got to figure out what that means.
Right.
What does that mean? What do we do with that? How do we plan? How are we going to change our processes? I don't know, but clearly we need to.
Hmm.
So that's our heavy lift. Jess?
So I would have appreciated like a discussion amongst like all of the senators beforehand, personally. One of them, like, because I didn't know if I was doing it, like, quote unquote, doing it right when I was doing my rankings. And I did kind of go based off of like the viability of the program. If we did not, like diving, for example, I took it as like, if we don't get anybody hired, then it might not exist. And I thought that was really important than adding an additional member to a body of like 10 faculty or full-time faculty already. And so maybe that could have come through a discussion beforehand or not, I don't know, but.
Okay, and so I hear you, Jess, and I would do the same. It was one of our criteria for ranking, but can I also add to what you're saying? I'll give the opposing point to what I was talking about, which is maybe we don't, well, I don't want to pick on them, but like maybe we don't want a chemistry program, and maybe our last chemistry professor is retiring, and maybe we don't want to make sure that the program doesn't die or does die. What am I trying to say? And so what I'm saying is like, but like, why as a senator just rank that? Like, oh, just because like, you know, nostalgia, we always want a chemistry program. Like, and that's what I mean is like, where do those important conversations happen? So like, I'm glad you rank that way. I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way to rank. But what I'm saying is like, why don't we let some of these programs die? Maybe they should die, right? So where does that happen? Yeah.
That was a good devil's advocate kind of statement. So
yeah,
good question.
Ruth?
I would say don't let them die.
I would say sometimes they need to, right? So like there's often creative destruction, right? We're evolving, the needs of our community are evolving, the industries are evolving. I mean, so I think this is an important thing, a conversation we need to be having. I've mentioned this a few different times, and I think part of the conversation needs to be happening also at CPC, right? Asking ourselves the question, what kind of college do we want to and or need to be, right, to serve our students, to serve our objectives, our missions. And it will involve, maybe we don't get rid of programs, but perhaps there's a resizing of it, right? So I think this is a very nuanced conversation. I think it's going to take a long time to get somewhere, but we do need to start having this conversation. And I don't think there's a better time to do that, because right now we are transitioning from a major shock to our entire system where we have to essentially reassess who we are, and where we're going.
So let's pause there. Let's be marinating on this as we switch gears over to inclusive access, because I do want the Senate to think carefully about our faculty body and replacement positions. So we'll come back to this perhaps in this meeting or perhaps in a future meeting, but let's figure out like some structure around this and how do we have these conversations and how do we engage in this planning. Okay, so it's 4:04 and I see Cindy Rogers here and I'm so excited that she's here to join us. So Cindy is here to help us navigate this weird and wild world of inclusive access. And so Cindy, for those of you that don't know, works in our bookstore as the accountant to the bookstore and has a particular area of expertise in inclusive access because she does a lot of the billing for it. And so she's here to give us a brief overview of this. And then also Nicole Hubert is here as well. She handles students' accounts and so is also here to help us navigate this weird and wild world of inclusive access and student billing. So yeah, Cindy, please take it away. Thank you so much for being here with us today. It's awesome to have you.
Hi, thank you for the nice introduction. And now my first sentence is no longer valid because you already told everyone who I am. I also have Peter Ewan here, who is my co-worker, and he's here to help answer any questions that you might have that speaks to his area expertise on inclusive access. And the reason I reached out to Rayanne and said, hey, because I was listening to your Senate meeting 2 weeks ago, and I realized there was some confusion. People were disagreeing with everybody, and I just want you to know, everybody's right. Everybody was right. The confusion comes because there were 2 programs calling themselves inclusive access. One of them is the mandatory material fees for the School of Modern Language. The campus store does not have anything, which is why Nicole is here, because she can speak to more of that. This is under the control of the School of Modern Language professors who developed the material. It's not associated with us. Nicole did change the verbiage for the mandatory fees, so it no longer says inclusive access when a student is registering, and that might help clear up some of the confusion. It now says mandatory material SOML fee. This is a mandatory fee which is tied to the student enrollment. It does not have the option to opt out, though there is a waiver the student can apply for this. Okay, but okay, the inclusive access program that the campus store it administers, which is what I can really speak to, is a choice that any professor can make to provide materials to their students. We have a vendor that works with most of the publishing companies to provide electronic material to the students. The students then access the material through their Canvas account. It's available to the student from the first day of class. And the students have until the add drop date to opt out of the material. If they choose to opt out of the material, they'll no longer have access through their Canvas account. There's a big yellow button that says opt out that they push. Okay, there's no waivers they have to fill out. If a student drops a class by the add drop date, they're automatically opted out. They don't have to remember to go in and opt out of that. If they've done it through the add drop date for the full refund, it's all automatic. If the student does not opt out of the material, I send out an invoice to the student's pipeline email about 10 days after that add drop date. I have to do some stuff because if a student has funds available on a book grant, we use those funds first. Okay, I'm going to, the Ascccc bookstore has a book grant. And if the student has funds on that, that's used before I invoice the student, okay? During the time before the add drop date, it's usually 2 weeks, but I'm sure you're all aware that it's shorter for summer or late start. But during that period, the student has full access to all of the material. It's not like a trial where they only get some of it. They get full access to all of the material, at which point they can decide whether they like it, they don't like it, their buddy has a hard copy book and is willing to give it to them. There's many things. If a student did not opt out by the deadline because they did not realize how to do it, or they did not see the emails that Peter sends out, multiple emails saying, hi, welcome to Inclusive Access, and this is what you do. And if you don't want it, this is what you do. If for whatever reason, they should reach out to Peter and he'll work with them. If they haven't, in fact, while listening to you, I was crediting out invoices because students never accessed it. They did not realize. We work with the students to make sure if they've used it and many of the like the biomedical sciences, their labs are all in there, and then they do their reports through the Inclusive Access electronically. If they've done all that, then they've purchased it. So there are many benefits to the Inclusive Access program. One is that it's mandated by law that if we have an Inclusive Access program, which is what I'm talking about, not the mandatory fees through School of Modern Language, the Inclusive Access program that the professors can choose. When you let us know what textbooks you want to use, you can say, hey, I want to use this, I want to use it Inclusive Access. It's mandated by law to be the lowest price available for any textbook, lower than a hard copy, lower than getting an ebook through the publisher themselves. That's the law, and that's what we follow. It also ensures a couple of things. The students have access to their textbooks from the first day of class, which we all know that some students, they need to wait on their financial aid or a paycheck or something. So sometimes they don't always have their textbooks right away. and this gives them that access. It also assures that the student gets the version and the edition that the professor wants to use. Because we are all aware that there are many out there. So if you're unfamiliar with what the Campus Store offers, Rayanne, can you throw up that flyer? There's a flyer. It's also attached to their agenda. And if there's any additional questions you might have for using this valuable resource, Peter will be happy to help you walk you through, because that's what he does. I just wanted to make this quick and then answer any questions that any of you might have concerning this. Anybody have any questions or?
I would like to talk a little bit more about the differences between the two things we call inclusive access. And I know you already did that. I want to reemphasize it, but I see at least Robbie's hand up. I thought I saw Counselor Jen's too. Robbie?
I wonder, is this something that there is automatically a version of for every text, major text that's out there? Or is there a way where I could go and see what the options are and see if I like any of them?
Most titles is offered as inclusive access. Not every title, it's not automatic. If your title or your book adoption is not listed as a digital access or inclusive access, we could reach out to publishers and they can create it for us. If you have access to the Verba Collect adoption page, if you enter an ISBN in there, if you scroll down, Rianne, can you scroll down to the bottom half? There's an image there that says digital match and IA price. It has the green check marks. If it has both of those, that's offered as IA or inclusive access.
And the Verba that he referenced is that link that we get from the bookstore where we go in and we declare our materials for the next semester. That's Verba. That's that system that he's referencing. So when you go in and you put in your ISBN and the content pops up and you say whether it's required or recommended or all of those things, that's where you would see that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then I have one more quick question. Do you like for the textbook I really like is insanely expensive, and so I have this convoluted thing to try to save them money. But if I were to use that expensive text, let's say it's a $250 text, do you have an idea how much the inclusive access thing would be? Because I let them use a free book from OpenStax, but I don't like it very much. And so if this were $100, I'd probably stick with the free thing. If it were $25, I might go with it. Do you have an idea?
In general, rule of thumb, what I've seen, okay, is it's 60% to 70% cheaper. Rule of thumb, please do not come down and beat me up if your textbook is
I
not.
promise I won't. Okay. So 70% cheaper, not 70% of the cost.
Correct.
Well, Robbie,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Robbie, it all varies by title.
Yeah,
You can
undoubtedly.
email me directly and I could find that number for you.
Okay. I'll get back to you at some point soon. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And one thing I'd like to add, and maybe it's obvious, I don't know, it probably is. This is a Captain Obvious comment, right? But I think if you go this route, if you have a textbook and you physically own it, you can resell it, right? But in this model, you're paying for the access for a specific period of time, and then you don't have access to it. So, it's just like a different system, a different way of accessing material.
Yeah, some options are perpetual, meaning they own it for the rest of their existence.
Oh, right on.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, but I do, students do value a book as you know,
Mhm.
I see what you're saying there.
However, the resale value when they sell it back often
It's not much.
is often not much. So,
Mhm.
and if the professor has changed, then we don't buy it back. And even if they have a physical book,
It was designed to be the most like affordable and convenient method of textbook for the students in mind.
Yep.
Questions, Joy and Counselor?
I think Counselor Jen was first and then Joy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Cynthia. That was a wonderful explanation of everything. It helped my confusion with some of it. I do have a couple more questions, a couple of questions. So you mentioned that I believe it was after 10 days, you start invoicing after around 10 days after the add drop period, you start invoicing the student. At what point do you put a hold on the student's account for the lack of payment?
About 60 days at past due.
And then
They get the invoice, they get a reminder every 30 days that invoice remains unpaid. And I know that I have seen many students say, oh, I never got the invoice. And I can go into my system and say, no, you viewed it on this day, this day, this day, this day, usually the day after all the reminders go out. We just started this in fall of 2020, and I worked very hard. They can now pay it online. It's not through Pipeline and their student finance, because their student, it's two different systems. But they can pay it online, and all they have to do is reach out to me or Peter, or Maria actually, and we can resend the invoice 12 times. But it's because they access it through their Canvas account, and which is tied to their Pipeline account, all that information is sent to their Pipeline account.
okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Also, can you tell me how many instructors are currently using the inclusive access?
We have 39 titles, 39 classes.
So yeah, 39 classes, not CRNs, but 39 separate classes with different titles. And we had there was about 2,500 students that took advantage of it in fall of 2021.
Do you know, I'm sorry, just two more questions. Do you know if this is the primary book that is being used in the course, or are these supplemental books, or is that kind of not something you would know at that?
It was meant to be the only option. Well, to avoid any confusion, it's not intended to be an option, an ebook option. It's intended to be like the new method of teaching and learning. It's to replace, I guess, the labor involved of procuring a book and financial purposes, like as Robbie said, a book costs like $200, or inclusive access like less than $50. It's a huge difference there. It's made to be more affordable for students.
Yes, it's wonderful. And my last question. So when I go into the bookstore and I go and shop for my books, this is before COVID that I remember going into the bookstore and looking at this.
Well, we're open, by the way. Love to see you.
I got to get some of my SBCC gear, I guess. So, but when I go into the stacks and I'm looking for my book and my book isn't there because it's an inclusive access book, will it say, what will the shelf say, if anything?
The shelf tag will say inclusive access, but if they do need a book, we will help them out as much as we can.
And we have had students that for whatever reason need a hard copy book for their learning modality. And we work very hard at making sure that we get the book into their hands, especially our students that have book grants like Promise and EOPS and stuff, and they're required to purchase their books through the bookstore to use that, because then I bill those people, because that's what I do. I bill people. But we work very hard if a student needs it. Can I just really, oh, now I've lost it. I just wanted to share Peter and I did a little happy dance and a feedback we got from a teacher. It says, I'm really noticing a difference in student success with my department's flagship course. I have many course activities that depend heavily on the textbook, and I usually see some students in each section are trying to fake it without the benefit of the textbook. This has really changed this semester, and I can see a difference in the student grades, which, even if not all stellar, are better even among struggling students than I am used to. I feel this program is quite valuable and impactful. I know it must be a tremendous amount of additional work, and then he made us feel good too. But some teachers are finding that it's really helpful. There might be some that don't. And that's okay too. You can still tell us, no, I want you to order this book in this version, and we will do our best to have it on the shelf. The other thing I noticed is some teachers like to use out of print books. The ones I'm thinking of is for I think it's ADC, but and they're out of print. And that's the way the students can access that book, because if they're out of print and have been for 4 or 5 years, we can't even get them on the secondary market. I mean, I suppose we could if we wanted to spend $500 a textbook, but we don't want that. We want our students to be as successful as possible. I mean, we spend a lot of time working and really don't make any money. We are mandated to support ourselves.
Well, I appreciate that, Cynthia and Peter, for your information, and it is great. I think that for me, I just would want to make sure that teaching faculty are communicating to their students on what this is and how fees are going to be incurred on their accounts. So that was the reason I was bringing a lot of this up originally. So again, I appreciate all your information, and thank you for everything you're doing for the students.
And then Joy?
Yeah, I wanted to give you a shout out. I teach 6 different classes, and I've used inclusive access for all of them. I started last summer with summer school, and art history books are expensive. They range around $175, $180. And my prices with inclusive access are $39.99 or lower. And I love it that students start out from day one with the textbook. My students, I would say maybe I've had 3 at the most who needed clarification, but Peter is great at helping. And Cynthia, I haven't interfaced with you so much, but Peter's been really helpful. I have one adjunct faculty who wants to interface with some of the, publisher quizzing and things like that. And Peter's really on it. It looks like that's possible. So I would encourage you to try it. It's good. And I do, though, also appreciate that you try to get a physical book on the shelf, because there definitely are students, some older students, that like to have turn the pages physically. But I would say you guys really made something that was unaffordable for a lot of students really able for them to afford it. And it seems like students put such a high priority on being portable right now that they love not having to drag a textbook around. So I think you guys, this is a game changer for sure, if you have expensive textbooks like I do.
Thank you, Joy.
Yeah, thank you.
Margarita? You're muted.
Well, actually, just reiterating what Joyce said, I just want to say thank you to you. Our books were very expensive, more than 200, 220 or something. Then we working really hard, we went to 170, 150. And right now working with you, they're about $50. And the other thing is that we never had everyone opening the book on the first day of classes. And now with the system, everyone has the book on the first day of classes. And that really makes our job easier, because we know we're not going to have all these pretexts of the students about, whatever it is that they don't have the book. Thank you very much for your help.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anna?
So I just wanted to clarify one quick thing. I think I understood it, but just want to make sure.
Okay, no, that's why I said I'll come and talk.
Thank you. We appreciate it. So you said for people who have book grants, you can bill them through the book grant, so it doesn't create an issue with that, right?
Right. Let me clarify, like the Promise Book Grant covers it all.
Right.
But if the student has meant a lot of inclusive access, most of EOPS gets covered. But let's say they have a SBCC bookstore book grant, which is $250, and they've spent some on whatever, and they've got a $50 inclusive access, but they only have $25 left on their book grant. I bill the scholarship, whatever they have left, and then bill the student the balance. In fact, this last time I ended up billing a student under $2. I think it was $1.98, because they had almost enough.
Okay.
So did that clarify, or do you need me to keep talking?
No, that's clear. Just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Oh, and I don't know if you're aware as faculty, but EOPS book grants close usually the week after the ad drop date, which obviously by that time I haven't invoiced yet, but I work with EOPS pretty closely, and they're fine with me invoicing after the grant closes. So the student doesn't have to worry about, oh, the grant only goes to this day, and
Meaning they make exceptions.
right. Ruth?
I think you said there were like 2,500 students that used this last semester. This may be a question for Nicole, actually, I'm not sure. Do we have an idea about how many of those like defaulted or didn't pay this fee?
Okay, that's me too. The one that Nicole can speak to kind of is the School of Modern Language mandatory material fee.
Okay, so I meant
actually, it was about 60% that didn't pay. Which is another reason I wanted to come talk to you, because we really need this the teachers to communicate on the syllabus and like the first day of class. If you're going to do this, you're going to get an invoice, and that's when we put the holds on. And many of the the holds went active 11/8, and we're handling payments several hundred a day. We try and make it as easy as possible for a student to pay. They can pay online. We give them our PayPal account. They can pay through PayPal. And I check and do that. In fact, over this long weekend, I'm going to take my computer home and check my emails to make sure if a student paid, their hold gets released right now. Okay. They can pay by PayPal. They can come into the store. They can call and give us their credit card over the phone. If they want, they can write us a check and snail mail it to us. We tried to think of every way they could possibly pay to make it as easy for any student to.
Okay, and then how, so has it only been the semester? I think I missed that part. How long have we been doing this? It's only been this semester?
No. It rolled out small, fall of 2020.
Okay.
And it's grown substantially.
Okay, and then, so can you describe the process, like the default process? Suppose a student never pays, how would that proceed? Like, what's the impact on the student in the end besides the hold? So like, this could be just, it is absolutely me being naive. Like, does it ultimately, get rolled into, what if this is a friction, the student doesn't want to deal with it, so they never come back and they're like, I'll never pay it. Does that ultimately get reported to like credit bureaus? And I don't know how that goes. So this is again,
it just sits on their account forever. And so if they decide, if they're like me and go back as a reentry student and decide they need their transcripts, and we don't charge any interest or anything. If it was $25.38, go ahead,
okay.
Nicole.
Great, thank you.
Clarify real quick that a student will never have their transcripts withheld for any financial reasons from the college. So they could have a hold on their account, but they will still receive their transcripts if requested. The same goes for any financial debts with the bookstore. They will still be able to access their transcripts.
Jen?
Thank you. Thanks, Ruth, for asking that. With 60% of 2,500, I mean, that's, and with the program only increasing in usage by teaching faculty, could there be something similar to what DSPS sends every semester to teaching faculty, reminding student or teaching faculty to maybe point out to their students if they're using this inclusive access that they need to ensure whatever it is, the information that needs to be disseminated to students at the beginning of every semester, maybe in possible verbiage that they can add to their syllabus. And if they're an IA teaching faculty using this. And because as an academic counselor, we have seen a number of students who are seeing us for priority registration, they're trying to get their classes, and then we have to tell them what the hold is. I will say it was a bit confusing this semester because we didn't really realize there was two different holds. I know with Nicole's Hubert, her department was having a hold, and then the bookstore was having a hold. So we were kind of, figuring things out, which affects students' their registration, and which is unfortunate because we're trying to get students in classes. We're trying to get our enrollment numbers up, all of these things. And if a student's deterred by this charge, that they weren't maybe confused about, it could affect them not coming back in the next semester. So any information that we are reminding our teaching faculty at the beginning of every semester would be at least a start until maybe it's becoming.
No, we actually want to do that. We want, not only do we want you to reach out to us if you have questions, but we would like to see it on their syllabus if they're using it. And because there's also been some other issues where the teacher has signed up for inclusive access, but also put a link directly to the publisher for the book, and the student thinks they're doing inclusive access, but they're paying the publisher directly, and they're paying more money, okay? Because remember, mandated by law, they're paying more than what the bookstore would be covering or charging them, and they're not opting out. So then I send it to them, and we work with those students. Yeah, believe me, so yes, we would love to. Peter will work on sending out stuff.
Yes, there has been some miscommunication in the past, but just because it's a new product.
And a new program.
I mean, yeah.
I know that Rayanne took a class that had inclusive access in the summertime, and I didn't have the ability to pay online. And believe me, we've grown and gotten better at it, okay? But it's growing pains. We're trying.
So I would like to go back to that idea of explaining the differences between the inclusive access. So it is true, I took an art class, drawing with Chris Levo, and it's true, his class offered the textbook via inclusive access. And so I would access the readings on my iPad for the drawing class. But there is this other kind of inclusive access. So I just want us to explain the differences. So this inclusive access you can opt out of. And then we have the other inclusive access, which really, I mean, I guess I know I understand that, but they're different things. So the other one is what? And what is that fee, and where does it go, and how are students charged for that?
Okay. So we're never going to call the student account side inclusive access again. It is a mandatory material fee. And I'm glad that this all came up in the last couple of days. Cindy and I talked about it. I changed student accounts now. So when they look at their student account, they won't see inclusive access. It'll say whatever the language or the class is and a material fee. So what this is we have several material fees across campus. We have MDT material fees. We have art material fees. We have material fees for the Sierra trips with geology. We now have, I think where the confusion is specific to the School of Modern Languages. We have 3 languages that they are doing a mandatory material fee. Mandatory material fees are governed by Ed Code. They are mandatory and charged at the time of registration. Those fees get approved when they go through the CAC process to get the course approved or course changes anytime something's going to be added. So it goes through the CAC process and then follows that to board approval. What we do is a scheduling office attaches whatever the charge is. So I'll use an example, Spanish from the School of Modern Languages. Theirs is now called the Spanish material fee. $90. When a student registers for the class, $90 automatically also gets charged onto their course, onto their student account. The student, if they don't want to pay it, then they don't have the choice. Now you can put in a petition to have the mandatory material fee waived. We send that over to the instructor, and the instructor would be the one to approve it. With those, generally, mandatory material fees would only be waived for School of Modern Languages if the student's already taken the class and they're taking it again, if they're taking a follow-up class where the material is the same, if there is a significant financial hardship of some sort, the district also covers mandatory material fees for that. And that goes across the board for all mandatory material fees. Mandatory fees have to pass a litmus test of several items. One is it consumable? The second is, does it have continuing value? Is it something that is readily available, or is it potentially too significant, too challenging for the student to procure and get themselves? Examples would be clay, raw clay. I'm sure students could carry, their 15 pounds of raw clay on the bus, but that's one that we sell and we do as a mandatory charge because it isn't reasonable to expect students to be able to procure small amounts at a price that is competitive with how we purchase it. So those are the basics. Bottom line, as a student, if it's getting a charge on the student account, they need to make their payment within 7 days or they'll get dropped for non-payment. That includes the enrollment and the fee because those are wrapped together. If the student is a student who is generally deferred, so that would be financial aid students, specialty programming, EOPS, nursing, not all specialty programs, but most of them, veterans, they are deferred from getting dropped. So what that means is they're able to add and drop courses throughout the period without ever having risk of getting dropped for non-payment. Those are set up because financial aid, legally, we can't disperse financial aid up until 10 days before school begins. That's the first day you can begin. And since we have a 7-day drop for non-payment policy, this allows these students to be able to register in advance and not be impacted by not paying because we know financial aid is going to come through. Behind the scenes, it's called memo aid. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of that. So that's basically what happens. A student is required to pay. If they do not pay at about 13 months, we send student accounts to collections. And so that it does impact their credit report. In between the time where they incur the charge and they pay, and they don't pay, we do send monthly emails on the beginning of each month, both their personal and to their private and to their pipeline emails. When they get sent to collections, educational debts and medical debts can all be reversed off of your credit report when it's settled, whether that means paid or settled. That's between the debtee and the debtor. But essentially what happens is when there is something that goes on, a student finally makes their payment with the collection agency will work with each and every one of our students and report back to the 3 credit bureaus to have those demarcations taken off. So that is something that you don't have to wait 7 years. It actually just comes off. So that's a good thing, but it does take extra effort and it takes knowing and pursuing those paths. But that would be the start and finish.
So, okay. I mean, maybe this is more of a question for Tara, who is our CAC liaison, or even Ruth, or anybody that has been on CAC for a number of years. So I'm a little confused. So a course materials fee like clay, okay. So I guess like if you're in an art class, I guess, and you're making pots, and so I guess the art department would then want to pass on that fee. But like in chemistry, we use a lot of glassware and a lot of chemicals, but we don't charge a course fee to our students to consume them. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, why would you pass on that fee to students? Can somebody walk me through that?
Can you repeat it? I'm so sorry.
No, it's not us.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean, like, I mean, this is, and by the way, Governor Schwarzenegger, like 10 years ago, made it so that you cannot charge that kind of fee in the sciences in STEM fields, because at like private universities and colleges, engineering colleges, for instance, will have higher tuition and higher course fees than other courses. And so it's an economic barrier for students, right? Like, if you can't afford it, you can't opt into those programs. So why would we then do the exact, like, why would we opt into this model here? I'm confused. Tara and Joy?
Yeah, so it was approved at CAC reluctantly. And when we looked at the handbook for course fees, technically it meets the requirement because students are able to access those materials even after the class ends. And so it's kind of like for the clay example, you make a pot and you get to take the pot home, like it's yours. You own the clay now forever. But it's a very slippery slope. And CAC felt at the time that we need to really, we need to update our methods for dealing with integrated digital textbooks into Canvas because, you know, frankly, CAC, again, it came back several times because we're not entirely comfortable with this. So it's opening up a broader conversation. We're not opposed to the merit or the content of those materials. Those are great. But is it suitable to be a course fee? That's that's the sticking point.
So CAC is not my lane, and I don't mean to offer criticism in a place that's not my lane, so to speak, but like, if there was hesitation around it, why not table the vote?
We already did that several times.
Why not table it longer?
Wasn't my call.
I'm like, okay, fine, a clay pot you get to take home and you get to look at for the rest of your life. I mean, I could certainly send home neutralized titration reactions.
I hear you.
I'm not going to, but what is, so now I'm hearing that this is a materials fee. Clay makes sense. Neutralized hazardous waste makes sense. What is the product that students are leaving a language class with? What is that?
They get the content of that digital material.
What does that mean?
It's their digital textbook for the class and some like interactive, because it's language, right? So it's interactive, you speak and it corrects you and you know, that kind of thing.
Do they get that for the rest of their life?
I don't know if it's for the rest of their life, but it's within the time limit set forward in course fees. 2 years. Yeah, 2 years.
Okay.
Thank you.
So they get this.
And the director of the campus store, Paul Miller, is trying to work with the School of Modern Language to get it so they can opt out and it's not attached. We're trying.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a fight with their publisher. That was the big deal. The publisher did not want to go through the bookstore. And this was their workaround, was to have it as a materials fee. And this is the whole thing didn't sit right with folks, but yeah, that's the history.
I just want to make sure that I understand this, because if set like curriculum is 10+1, right? So if this is going through CAC, Senate owns this process. And this sounds like something that's not well understood, and that we are now having instructors approach the curriculum committee to approve, and we don't have policy, procedure, anything around this. So like,
and that's what CAC wants for us to have broader conversations around, is we have this new delivery of a textbook. And unfortunately, for the School of Modern Languages, the perception for them was that we were critiquing the content of that textbook, that we were somehow saying, no, the material in there isn't appropriate or isn't accurate or something along those lines, which wasn't what CAC was saying. CAC was saying, we don't really have a process for handling an integrated textbook into Canvas when the publisher doesn't want to go through the bookstore. We don't have that process. So, and that's outside of CAC.
But wait a minute, if it's an integrated textbook in Canvas, that is not analogous to Clay. So
It
how
meets one of the requirements though, because there are different types of materials fees. Like when Nicole was talking about like consumables, part of that was through like the culinary school. You have to be able to like eat what you make, and obviously no one's going to eat their pot, right? So there are different categories.
Okay, fine. What do students take after they're done with this course?
The materials.
But what does that mean? They don't have access to Canvas after the class is done. So what do they, like worksheets?
I think they can still access Canvas for up to 2 years.
Okay.
Again, you can see our confusion, like at CAC, and this erupted into fireworks multiple times. I'm sure Kathy and Ruth can back me up on this. And it's a temporary solution, I think, as far as CAC is concerned. But we were, you know, there was input from Dean Emhoff on it. There was input from Pamela Rolston when she was around. I see Kathy has her hand raised. She can probably add more here. It did not sit well with CAC because of it was a fee. But again, it was not a critique of the material itself.
So it's not temporary because we now have it.
Well, it has to come back for review again.
Does it?
Yes, we required that.
Okay.
But
okay.
Yeah, but they're getting tired of coming back because they want the process to be modified to include these new technologies, which I understand. That's true.
Okay, so we are running quickly out of time. So Ellen, Counselor Jen, Ruth, and then.
Okay, just quickly, I have concerns about equating content from a language class with, you know, the pottery you make in a ceramics class. I took an SBCC Spanish class within the 2-year time frame. I just checked Canvas and I do have access to it, but you know, I'm thinking of students who are not continuing students at SBCC and how that would affect their access. This happens frequently in the library in the summer when a student is trying to access content from a spring course, like because they have an incomplete or something like that, and they can't log into Pipeline. So even if they technically have access to Canvas, if they can't log into Pipeline, then how are they accessing this content? So that's just another, how it's technically set up. I guess I'm saying I'm not convinced that they really would have access for those 2 years in all circumstances.
Counselor Jen?
I have a really old list, but I have about 62 classes that have course fees and materials that are attached to it. So I would be curious to see if we could agendize this for a future meeting and see a list of all of the classes on campus that have course fees that and what they are. You know, I'm looking at an old list for photography, for a portfolio class within photography, golf, printmaking, medical microbiology. And again, this is an old list, but I would be curious to see what those fees are and why an extra $40 is needed for the class and what, et cetera. So I'm just bringing that up.
I'd be happy to share that information. That's all information that I have at my fingertips since I'm charging the students. So I can prepare that for you guys and send it over.
So Nicole, you can get us the classes, but could you also get what the charge is for?
Yeah, it's every charge, every material fee that we have right now has been board approved. And so it's at some point has gone through that process and it's been listed out, but I've got it all because I can't load it into the system until it's board approved. So I can easily get that for you guys. So what I'll do is I can provide what the materials fee is for, what the dollar amount is, and then just the general theme of the class. I'm not going to break it down by CRNs if that's okay.
No, it doesn't need to be by CRNs. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess then the question is, what do we do with this once we have it? Like, we're not an authority body. So, you know, and if it's board approved, then to me, it's a done deal. I mean, it would be nice to have this conversation as a Senate, but what are we going to do with it once we have it is my question. It's something I want.
Well, I mean, we approached to having expensive books and now we have inclusive access. So couldn't the conversation be what else can we do to ensure that this is affordable for all students and not a barrier to taking a graphic design class because they have to pay an extra $30? I mean,
No, I'm with you on that. But what I'm saying is, okay, so let's say chemistry has a $60 fee for neutralizing acid materials. And the Senate looks at it. And you tell me it's a barrier for my class, and I tell you, you don't know what you're talking about, and I'm the
yeah, I don't know what I would be talking about.
Well, no, I mean, I'm just
No.
saying that I know this is my area, not yours. This is my class. It's gone through CAC, it's board approved, right? I mean, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, what level of accountability can we get here? I mean, this is certainly in line with transparency. It'd be nice to have this conversation. I'm just wondering, like, as a Senate, as a faculty body, what do we do around this? I'm just wondering. So just something for all of us to think about and consider. I mean, maybe public shaming. Ruth, and then Kathy.
I'd also like to see that list. So I appreciate that Councilor Jen mentioned that. And I don't think it should be like a class by class, you know, defense or argument as to why they're keeping it. That comes to Senate, but it sounds like CAC does need guidance, and there's still a lot of things we don't understand, so that this needs further discussion and then potentially some policy, and not, you know, chemistry or what particular classes can do. But once we have an understanding of the different forms that this can, you know, the way this can manifest itself in these fees, we can have like this broader policy in place, so that we can move forward with it, and that it meets certain criteria in addition to maybe the ed code ones.
So, okay, one more question to the body before Kathy comments. So we talked inclusive access. We talked these mandatory material fees for the classes with CAC. Do we have classes that require access to content through a fee that's in another category that we haven't discussed? Do we have that or no? Have we addressed all of
Not that we know. Yeah. No.
So we don't have any like online courses that have an access fee to their material?
Well, the only fee they would have, Rayanne, would be like a textbook fee. Some online classes over the years have had to have some access to software, but right now most of the software students need are included in their class. So as far as we know, there isn't any other class that has a fee, you know, through our fee system, that is course content. That was what made the discussion about the the Spanish class so challenging. What was the other one, Nicole?
Okay, so let me ask my question more directly then. So do we not have any classes that have perhaps a class fee, material fee, or course content fee that is outside of our official fee system? Okay, Counselor Jen, what is that?
Well, I would think cosmetology. You can't be in the program without purchasing any of the materials in order to take the class. If I can't purchase the kit, right?
You purchase those through the bookstore, but we have like a bookstore at cosmetology specifically for those purchases.
What about like culinary when they have to buy their knife set and the equipment?
Uniform.
Except for their non-slip shoes, we have everything, don't we? We have the baking kits, we have the knives, we have their pants, we have the hats, we have the aprons. Part of that is for promise.
So I'm gonna ask my question again.
Okay.
Do we have any classes that may be charging students course content fees that is outside of the bookstore setup that we have already discussed and the student account fee that perhaps Nicole is wrangling?
SEL.
Not that we know of.
Okay, hold on. I'm not asking Cindy and Nicole. I'm asking senators. As you interface with the faculty in your departments and you know of faculty norms and perhaps things that they do, is there anything that the Senate should know about that is happening where students are being charged content fees outside of the structures that we have already discussed?
There shouldn't be.
Okay, that's not what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Does anyone know about this?
I have a couple of questions to ask among my division, but I don't know of anything firmly enough to mention it here. In case that helps. And just in case it adds to this conversation, my course had a lab fee before I was hired, and we got rid of it, and it was it was pretty bad. That we bought toothbrushes for students so they could take them home, so that we could say they were taking something home, so that we could charge them $40. It was nuts, and that has since been deleted.
Okay, so that has been deleted.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm wondering if there are any practices out there that may be of similar questionable occurrences that Senate should know about, because we are the professional voice of the faculty body and we are concerned about classroom experiences and equity. So it sounds like there aren't any, which is such a relief to hear, because I could have sworn that we had some. So I just wanted to, name that, say it, be open and transparent in the meeting, but we don't have it. So that sounds good. So we have Kathy and then Jess.
Okay, very quickly, we've been discussing the fees at Curriculum Committee for years. Nicole has done an excellent job of coming to our committee and explaining fees. Well, I don't think we've had her come in the last couple of years, but about 4 or 5 years ago, when Paco first came with this idea of having a fee, because he was in production of this material, it was not established as an official, say, textbook. I was very concerned about it, and we took it to the EVP. We had a detailed discussion. Nicole was involved in educating all of us on appropriate fees, and we decided that we would allow this to happen as sort of a temporary thing for the Spanish department because this material they were developing was so unique. The reason it came up again is because it was supposed to come up again and they wanted to use this same fee for other language classes. They've developed this software for multiple languages. We again engaged with the EVP. We again engaged with Nicole. It is a temporary situation. Tara is right. This has been a very difficult decision for us, but it has been the only way that these students could actually access this material, which has proven to be very effective in language learning. So this discussion is not over by any means. I think our curriculum committee has a much better idea of what appropriate fees are, but we do have some new members, and maybe Nicole could come back and have this discussion with us and then have it with the Senate. So the Senate also understands that these fees go through a lot of scrutiny and they're bound by regulation. It's not just that we can decide to have a fee and attach it to our class.
Anna, and then we definitely need to end our meeting.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I guess Jess was supposed to go.
Jess?
I was gonna say something, but I think I can probably mention it maybe in the future after I
Okay.
research.
Yeah, it's all good. I just, you know. I get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect.
Anna?
Okay, I guess I wanted to ask if this conversation is going to come back to Senate. I hate that I'm the one who has to bring this up, but I think it's clear that many folks in this space know of folks that may be charging fees outside of our fees assessment process. And I want to know how we address that.
As do I.
Policy.
Well, why do we need policy?
Well,
to
that's a
address
whole
it?
other issue.
Because if we have instructors charging fees that are outside of our processes and norms, why can that not be addressed? Like, I don't need a policy that says I can't stab my students, right? Like, we don't need that policy. So hopefully we wouldn't need a policy that says you're not allowed to charge for XYZ outside of our processes,
I
right?
hear you, yes. Mhm.
So I'm not sure it is policy. So Nicole?
I just wanted to state that I feel like I'm in a really weird position. I'm very uncomfortable in that if there are fees being charged outside of this system, I need to know about it. And I need you guys to share with me. So Kathy did a really succinct job of kind of explaining how School of Extended Learning, School of Modern Languages got to this point. What preceded that was a massive cleanup of material fees across the board. And I tried my darndest to find everything that's out there. So if there continues to be faculty collecting money, it's illegal and it's not okay from both a district liability standpoint and for the students. And just also, it's just wrong. So I'm going to ask everyone to come to me privately if you need to, but this concerns me.
So along those lines, part of this conversation, part of me asking these questions is also so that not only do we clean up perhaps practices that may not be legal, but also, like, I don't think we've talked about students enough at all in the last hour. Like, I don't think we did. This person developed this, it went to this committee, they need to be, right? Like, where is the student discussion in that? Like, oh, students can take their bowls home, And that's why we, right? I mean, like, I'm just concerned around this as a faculty senate, that we are not centering students and having to pay for course materials enough. So I just want to recenter us there. Robbie and then Jess, and then we should really, we absolutely must end our meeting.
I would like it to come up at a future Senate meeting. I think we should agendize this topic in particular. And I think I think it is our purview in that these things are supposed to be CAC approved, and that's a Senate committee. And I think so we can set the rules of what passes muster at CAC and what doesn't, right? And I think we can also, if we decide that this stuff is happening and it's a problem, we can, in addition to doing that, we can tell the administration about it, or maybe talk to Nicole personally. I haven't thought that through carefully, but we can also get administration involved to cover the topic from their end also.
But I just want to warn us as a Senate, as we engage in this work, it is going to get ugly, right? Like, can we all accept that? It was already ugly at CAC, and this is going to continue to be ugly. So I just want us to make sure that as we go forward with this, I'm ready, but we all need to be ready for that. And I'm not saying to make it ugly. What I'm saying is brave, honest space where it's not only transparent, but we also hold each other accountable, right? Like, that's part of the important work at the Senate, I think. So Jess, and then we really need to end this meeting.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I just wanted this to be said that I acknowledge that our interaction a moment ago sounded a little sketch, as if we knew things, but I did want to say that as far as I know, it's just a rumor. So I don't want to say anything like it's truth. And so I said I would look into a possibility of this being a thing. And if it is, then I can say it as fact rather than spreading rumors. And so I just didn't want that to happen.
Well, I mean, we all want to be careful of libel and slander. I get that. I guess what I'm getting at is, from a Senate's perspective, are there we don't have to name names, we don't have to name classes. Are there processes that may be happening on our campus that are outside of the norms that we've already discussed?
So I would say, yes,
so we need to think about that, right? So, right, yes, maybe let's find out more information. The other thing is, I want to make sure that Senate isn't out to get people, right? But I am concerned if this is happening, that it's not a student-centered approach. And I think vetting the fees that have already been established that Nicole said she could share with us is important. But I don't know how to do that because, you know, am I to critique somebody else's content? Ellen?
I just wanted to say quickly, an experience I had taking a class, an online class somewhere else that I just want to offer something more specific as an example of what I think would be problematic. I was required to purchase a textbook written by the course instructor through her website. So that process didn't go through, this was at San Jose State. So it didn't go through the college at all. It was just, here I arrive in this Canvas course, and it's like, you need to go buy this book that I wrote for $80. Now, I personally have a problem with that. I don't know if that falls in the category of what we're talking about, it being illegal, or if that's just, okay, it's a textbook, but it's not available through the campus bookstore. You have to purchase it elsewhere. So I know we don't have time to get into that discussion now, but I want to put that out there as part of this conversation when we're talking about buying, whether it's physical or online materials that were created by the instructor through a process that doesn't involve the college.
Appreciated. Exactly. So on that note, we're going to end our meeting. It's not Los Agaves night tonight, guys. It's sushi night.
Wait, I'm making mac and cheese.
Bye, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Aye.